Hello everyone, Gus Worland here from Gotcha4Life, and I've got my CEO Tim Hodgson here with us, but most importantly we've got a couple of people from Landcare. Nicole, who looks after the Murrumbidgee area. G'day Nicole, how are you feeling today?
I'm good, thanks Gus. Thank you for inviting me in.
It's fantastic, and really looking forward to doing wonderful work out in your region, and we'll reason why it's such a personal region for me in a moment. G'day Adrian, who runs the show there at Landcare. How are you coping, Adrian?
I'm good, Gus. I'm good. All going well. Very busy, despite the isolation. So yeah, thank you, and lovely to be here on this meeting today.
It's lovely to see all of you, and I suppose right off the bat, how did the relationship between Gotcha4Life and Landcare come together? And it really is a beautiful story. A friend of Adrian's and mine, who we've both known, well, I've known Rob for over 45 years. He was my next door neighbour, and his best friend at university and still now is Adrian. And he just heard all the work that Gotcha4Life were doing, and obviously then had opportunities to talk to Adrian. And Adrian said, well, this is what I'm doing. And it just came to him, I've got to get these two people together. And that's what happened. We had one meeting, and it was just, well, if it was Valentine's Day, we'd be married by now. Let's put it that way. And it just seemed really, really wonderful. And I think that's where the relationship has gone. And of course, with Tim being involved now, running the foundation and doing all the dotting of the I's and crossing of the T's, we are now in a situation where I think we've got some wonderful programs and wonderful ideas. And you've obviously got the infrastructure for us to go out and do some make some real change out in the country of New South Wales. So would that be a pretty good explanation, Adrian?
It's perfect. I mean, the relationship was just such a natural relationship, such a natural fit between Landcare New South Wales and Gotcha4Life. You know, Landcare is really based on three pillars. One of them is environmental protection, the other one is sustainable farming, but the third one is resilient communities. And I remember we were talking at a time when New South Wales was going through a really bad drought, and we were talking about how tough the farmers were doing it and the pressures on them and their families and their communities. And we thought, well, wouldn't it be wonderful if we worked together to actually be able to offer something new and something pretty compelling to the Landcare communities across New South Wales. And then if you remember, we discussed the social scaffold that Landcare New South Wales had built with its member groups by having all these Landcare coordinators dispersed right across the state. We have 84 of them today, and through that network, we're planning now to be able to roll out all these wonderful programs that Gotcha4Life can offer.
It really is a wonderful, wonderful relationship, and I cannot wait to get in particular into Murrumbidgee, and I'll talk to you in a moment, Nicole, about that and how vital it is. But Tim, if I could ask you, once the relationship was settled, and that was over drinks at Christmas, where we officially sort of signed the dotted line, but why do you think Gotcha and Landcare are such a great connect, and why do you think, I think it's probably one of the most vital partnerships moving forward as a foundation?
Yeah, I think it's huge for us. If I think about our first meeting, Adrian, it feels like it was about July last year. Drought was obviously a key issue in rural and regional areas. Since then, a lot's changed. Obviously, fires have swept through many of the areas, and now the coronavirus. So things have laddered on top of each other. And what I think we've found at Gotcha4Life over the years is that we can only really deliver. We're only really as good as the local connections that we have and the people that we have on the ground to help us bring to life the programs that we've got, which are all around helping people connect and prevent instances of poor mental health through better connection in communities. And so we can only do that through wonderful local people who understand what's happening on the ground. And last week, you know, where we're at right now, I guess, when you think what the piece of research that our Federal Minister of Health, Greg Hunt, received, was it Wednesday last week, that talked about the potential increase in suicides. So, you know, the worst end of what we're dealing with over the next year, 12 months to 5 years, being 25 to 50%. He pulled out two key areas. He talked about rural and regional, and he talked about youth. And so I guess there's never been a more important time for us to have this partnership going and to have local people on the ground looking out for opportunities to bring our programs in. You know, we've managed to flatten one curve to a degree, but there's another curve on the horizon, and we're all about preventative. And so now's the time. I think it's wonderful that we met you last year. It's wonderful that we've got an official relationship now, and it's wonderful we've got people like Nick on the ground who can help us bring this to life at a really important time.
And that's absolutely right. And that's the right time now to bring you in, Nick, because as Tim said, a region or a connection is never going to be much good unless we have the right people on the ground telling us how to do it, and you organising us, if you like, and making sure we're doing it the right way. So please tell us about your region and how things are with you at the moment, because as Tim said, the natural disaster side of things, drought into fires, into floods in some areas, back to drought again. It must be very, very tough at the moment.
That's right. Look, I mean, the drought has been going for years, and it still continues. We've had a decent amount of rain through autumn, but that's, you know, that's good autumn rain. It's not the end of a drought until we, you know, get right through the season and harvest everything. So at the moment where things are looking up a little, but I wouldn't say that the drought's over by any stretch of the imagination. So that's still a really big thing for people. The bushfires obviously were pretty horrendous. We had some areas that were very badly burnt. And I think the coronavirus hasn't really impacted our farming community in the way that it probably has impacted a lot of others, because I think farmers are natural isolators. They're kind of used to being on their own for several weeks, just going to town for groceries and that sort of thing. So it hasn't necessarily hit farmers, although obviously our towns have felt the impact of that. But the one impact of coronavirus that it has been really big here is that it has taken the focus off bushfires and drought and stopped people being able to recover in the way that they normally would, because there's a lot of restrictions on, you know, people can't do working bees and get out and help their neighbours and that sort of thing. And there was lots of, immediately after the bushfires, there was a lot of enthusiasm of volunteers coming from outside the area and so on, and obviously all that has stopped now. So that's been a big impact on the area. I think, I guess in terms of getting Landcare involved with Gotcha4Life, I think the fit is really crucial. As Adrian touched on, the community connection aspect of Landcare, the role that we play in that. There's a lot of groups out there that are doing you know, sustainable farming programs and natural regeneration programs and that sort of thing. But I think the key to the success in many ways of Landcare is the fact that we do it through a community focus. So it's all about getting people together to do it together, to learn together, to do work together and that sort of thing. So in that respect, we're sort of already set up with these community connections to bring in something like Gotcha4Life. So yeah, I think it's a really nice fit and really excited to bring it to this area.
How big is the Murrumbidgee area in terms of absolute size and distances between, you know, your borders that you have to look after?
Yeah, so it's officially 84,000 square kilometres, if you want the textbook definition. But in terms of hours, it's, I mean, Wagga's skewed to one side of it, which is where I'm based. So it's, you know, a couple of hours east, north and south, and then to the west, it's probably about 4 hours or so to the end of our region. So it's a pretty wide area. And there's lots of, I mean, the spread of the population is quite uneven across there. There's the big populations in Wagga and Griffith and so on. And then, you know, obviously a lot of smaller areas where might be more in need of things like this, not necessarily always having access to programs like this where they really need it. Yes.
Well, I said in my opener, Nick, that, you know, this area is very close to my heart because I've spent so much time in Hay, which is a couple of hours from Wagga and very much in your area. And I've noticed as I go out there less and less now, but every couple of years for weddings or big, you know, birthdays or something, that the town has shrunk, that it doesn't quite seem to as vibrant as it used to be. And do you find that towns of sort of Hay size are doing that all through your region?
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, the drought has absolutely had a big impact on that sort of thing, because you find that it's not just people leaving the farm, but then because people are struggling financially, that the town itself starts to struggle, and the kids, the schools end up getting so small that the kids that are left have to go to boarding school or something. They can't go to the local schools anymore because there's not enough people to sustain the schools. So it's sort of this whole flow-on effect, and it can have a really disastrous impact on a town. And as you say, it's noticeable that they're less vibrant than they used to be in many places.
Yeah. Adrian, when you hear that, you see the size of the job that Landcare has. One of the pillars, as you said, is looking after your actual people. And this is something that Gotcha4Life and our program partners can do. It's an exciting to feel once we can get out there and do it. Plus, we've got some virtual programs too now that we might be able to go with straight away. It's exciting to feel that we can get out there and really help.
Yes, it is, Gus. It's very, very exciting because, what we are doing here, jointly with Gotcha4Life is right at the heart of Landcare. It's all about community, as Nick has just mentioned, whether it's regenerative farming, sustainable ag, or, biodiversity protection, or any other social measure. It's all about community. It's all from the ground up. So that's really, really important for us to design with the stakeholders, the community themselves, of how they want a program to be run, to be managed, and what else they would like to see going forward. So it's all about them. I see myself as, Landcare New South Wales as a facilitator, as an enabler, almost like a servant leader. I just follow what my community tells me to do. Obviously, I provide my own input and ideas, but at the end of the day, it's their decision. The other piece of it is also very important, is to highlight this relationship and the benefits it brings to our stakeholders. And that could be, governments, it could be corporates, it could be the general community, who I'm sure would love to hear about this wonderful relationship that we've built together between Gotcha4Life and Landcare New South Wales, and the amount, the amazing wealth of benefits that this relationship will deliver. We're all in it together. I know it's a catchphrase nowadays with COVID-19, but this is very, very true when we're talking about mental health and other issues that are really hammering our communities.
I couldn't say it better myself. And Nick, if I could just ask you again, when I talk around isolation, I talk about connection. We physically can't be with each other, even though that is starting to relax a little bit. But with technology, certainly in the city and along the coastline, I feel that you can still keep in contact. Can you still do that out there in the country? Because a lot of people say, well, I can do it, everyone can do it. But what is the internet like? What are systems like to be able to FaceTime someone rather than just speak to someone, and just to keep in contact in some way?
Yeah, it's very variable, and certainly there are issues. I mean, even just with my kids at school trying to do some schoolwork over the internet, and plenty of kids in their class just don't have the bandwidth to be able to do maths games or anything on the computer. So it's definitely an issue, and we're just out of Wagga, so it's not like we're in the boondocks or anything. And I mean, I'm here. I live at Downside, just out of Wagga, and I don't have mobile phone reception here. So it's definitely an issue with technology. I think that we do. I think people that are living in these sorts of areas do depend on their neighbours very much more so perhaps than in the city, because of those technology issues that people do sort of naturally build a stronger relationship with their neighbours. So when those connections are forced to be cut, it can be a big issue. Yeah, it can make a big impact.
I can understand that. And Tim, as you're listening to Adrian and Nicole, I suppose in particular, around actually being on the boots on the ground, could you explain to anyone watching now the type of programs that we'll be able to help Nicole and other areas with, the type of partners that we support that will build that mental fitness? So when we are up and running, whether it's virtual at the moment or whether technology is going to stop that, whether, once we're up and running, us just getting out there and going into schools and into blokes' nights and gatherings and so forth.
Yeah, sure. So I guess one of our roles is to help build the capacity of what we believe are the best preventative mental health programs. We talk about building mental fitness through those programs. And for us, that is a depth of social connection. It is building the emotional muscle, and hence the resilience that comes from both those things. An individual resilience, the ability to get up after a knockback, but also probably more importantly, a community resilience, which is about connecting people so that we can work together to get back up off the ground, if you like. And so we've got a range of partners in Tomorrow Man and Tomorrow Woman, and they go into schools, they go into community clubs, they go into corporates. We've got Communication with Care, which is more of a training program around mental health and understanding the challenges of mental health better and how to have empathetic conversations in that space. The other key organisation that we should mention that's part of this coalition, we were talking about it as a coalition the other day, is RAMF, who are a real powerhouse in rural and regional areas in the space of mental health. So having them involved in this partnership is wonderful, and they've got programs that also go into communities and workplaces to upskill us to have these conversations. They're conversations that are sometimes really hard to have, and that's what, when we talk about the emotional muscle, it's about the ability to talk about tough things and open up that conversation and release a bit of that pressure that can build up by internalizing issues that we have. And that is a muscle, and that muscle needs stressing, just like any physical muscle needs stressing that we go to the gym for or go for a run for. So these programs are giving people the tools and the mental fitness to be able to deal with these issues. And I guess our approach is to try and be as community-wide as possible. So not just to be in schools, but schools is really important to us because it's that breeding ground that we can change a culture in the long term if we can train it into our young, but also into community groups and corporates and other gatherings to make sure that we're touching as much of the community as possible.
When you hear that sort of, Nick, and when I hear that sort of stuff, I hear a lot of awareness and I hear a lot of good stuff, and I believe it because obviously I'm part of it. But a lot of people that I speak to in the country, they have heard that sort of stuff before. Let's absolutely get down to the nuts and bolts of it. You need to turn up. You need to show what you're about. You need to show you've got some heart, empathy, and some ticker. And then you have to show up again. And then you've got to show up again. And all of a sudden, eventually they'll go, oh, you guys are back again. Oh, we might start listening to you. Or there's always going to be 10% that love you no matter what. Thank you for coming. And, we appreciate it. 10% won't like you no matter what. But that 80% in the middle will come round and start perhaps changing their habits once you keep turning up and keep turning up. And that's what I love about what we do is the regions we keep turning up in, they're now got community champions that are fundraising and can't wait to organise the next thing because they realise how important it is to have that change.
That's right, yeah. I think that, in farming communities, particularly the Tomorrow Man and Tomorrow Woman program that you spoke about, Tim, are so important because there's so many ingrained stereotypes of what a farmer should be or what a man or a woman should be, and really getting people to understand that there's so many varieties within that and that you don't have to meet a particular stereotype to be seen as a man or seen as a woman. So I'm really keen to bring that program. I definitely support the programs in schools. I think that it should be an essential part of the curriculum for all children going through right from primary school. I've got 3 young kids and I absolutely, I worry about their mental strength as they go through and learn, how to face all the problems that they'll no doubt come across through their lives. And I hope that they can have the resilience and the strength to get through them. And then at the other end, I guess the other aspects that I'm really passionate about I have personal experience that 4 years ago, I lost my father to suicide. And that's sort of what got me started on this path of being really passionate about good community, good mental health amongst the community and understanding mental health. And I think that just getting, you know, people that have these beliefs in their head of what they should be or what represents their worth and their value, just really challenging those beliefs is so important. And so that's why I'm really keen to get these programs out where they're needed.
Well, I think I speak on behalf of Adrian and Tim as well, just to say thank you for sharing that, and that we, you know, that's very sad to hear what you had to go through. So our heart is with you. There's a piece in Manup, Nick, where John Harper or China, we go into a cattle station, and all these blokes are pouring in utes, and you know, and we're told we're going to put on a barbie and some beers if they turn up, and that was the only way we're going to get them there.
Yeah.
And we crack a beer, and we're sitting there, and John goes, right, put your beer down for 1 second, and he said, grab your bits and bobs with both hands, turn to someone on your right or left, and tell them something about yourself. And so everyone's a bit sort of shy and a bit nervous, but they do it. And he said, pick your beer back up again. He said, have a look down. Amazing. You've actually had a conversation and your bits and bobs are still there. It goes to show, doesn't it? You can talk and you're not going to lose your manhood. Like, this is just a real basic way of looking at it. But there's so many blokes out there that just do not get that. They, you know, and it's a really nice way to break the ice and everyone has a laugh and stuff. But it really is so challenging for men to try to live up to this stereotype and to change that without them thinking they're going to lose their manliness. That's the key, isn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah. Just making sure that people understand that there are other options around, that there's other ways to be, and you're still a worthwhile person. You know, you're still offering value to your family and to your farm and to society. It doesn't, it's not just this one vision of what you might have of what represents a worthwhile person.
So when we're thinking, Nick, of coming into your region and stuff, do you see it as we come and do the schools, and then we come and do the gathering, which is the ladies' evening, we do the night with the blokes? So we're actually like plonk ourselves in that region for a week, let's say, at a time, so we can get all those things done.
Yeah.
In terms of your region, people coming in and traveling and stuff, but is that more difficult for you? Because of course in the city or along the coastline, you know, we can do a surf club or a sporting club. It's a little bit easier. How do you see that working?
Yeah, it definitely involved moving throughout the region. It's too far. For people won't travel, particularly not for just an evening. You know, it'd be too hard. So yeah, that's one of the difficulties of obviously living in areas that are haven't got big populations themselves. That you have to go to a sort of central places throughout the region and try and draw people in. But I guess that's the challenge that we'll face with this, as we do with many of our events, that you sort of perhaps go to different areas and work out which pub's the one that'll get everyone there, and work out the key times that you have to be there. Yeah.
Nick, it was amazing. I went away with my radio show last year, and we doled the night up as a night of comedy, but before that there'll be a bit of mental fitness stuff. And we were in a couple of regions outside of Orange, and one night in Orange, we were in the beer garden so they could smoke and drink, and we just tried to make it as easy as possible. And there was a whole heap of blokes there with their girlfriends, and the girlfriends would sort of get in there and listen to this sort of thing. So anyway, I got up first, and it was really tough for the comedian behind me, which was Lawrence Mooney, who I was on the show with. He said, this is the worst warm-up artist I've ever had. Gus talking about mental health and suicide and that sort of thing. Anyway, I did about 20 minutes off the top, and there was not a sound. It was silent. And to the point where people were coming out and going, what's going on? And they just stopped. And everyone was really respectful. No one left to get a drink. No one got up from where they're seated. There was no fidgeting. I could feel the whole place was just focused, because I hit a raw nerve. I started talking about things that everyone went, oh yeah, that's me, that's me. You know those eye stories, if you hear something on the radio? Me too. Oh yeah, that happened to me. And then once I'd finished, the comedian started, people got up, People went and got a drink. People went to the toilet. So the whole night in our heads was like, oh, we've just got to get through the mental fitness stuff and then let Moon Man do his stuff and he'll entertain everyone. No one cared about the comedian. I mean, he was funny and they enjoyed their night, but they weren't there for that. They were there for, and even if they didn't realize it, they ended up wanting to hear what I had to say. So it's a matter of just bringing it, delivering it, and turning up and keeping on having a crack. That I reckon is the key, and that will eventually get through it.
Yeah, that's right. And it is all in the way that you sell it to people. I think that a lot of people, even though, as you say, even though they were there for the mental health thing, they wouldn't have gone unless there was the comedy thing to buffer it and to say, oh, let's go to this comedy show.
Yeah.
And, oh, that'll be great. And then, they get the knowledge that they actually come for.
How do you see us best attacking that, Adrian, when we think about how we do dress it up? Because Nick's right, they wouldn't have turned up. It was a night of mental fitness with Gus Worland. But the fact is, once they were there and they were settled, they actually probably took more out of that, of what I said, than what Moon Man actually did. How can we do that best?
I really think it has to be tailored to the particular community that you're addressing. I think every single community in New South Wales will be different. Although we're one large culture in New South Wales, so to speak, there are nuances between one region and the next, and even between one particular town and the next. So whatever works for Orange might not work for Bathurst, which might not work for Wagga, it might not work for Hay. So I think we need to work with people like Nicole and tailor it to that particular community where we intend to go. So I think that would be really a critical value that we're going to be bringing as part of this partnership. Is just that it's not a one brush approach, broad brush approach to what we're doing, but it's going to be tailored to have a much more meaningful and long-lasting impact to those particular communities.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's something we really have to focus on, Tim, moving forward, is making sure that we're speaking to the Nicoles of each region to make sure that we do tailor it right. And it might be some disappointing nights where we're all there and we're all geared up to go and there's 7 people in the room. That we've got to be ready for that. And there's a lot of money and time and effort goes into that, but we're here for the long haul stuff, Tim. We need to make sure we do that right.
That's right. Well, as you said, I think, with Tumid originally, time, with time comes trust, and with trust comes more engagement and more people. But if and where we can find hooks to get people into the room a bit earlier on in that journey, then great. Sport's probably the other great hook for blokes, isn't it? I mean, we have burgeoning relationships with rugby league and cricket in New South Wales, and there may be communities and opportunities and timings that align that allow us to bring in some great personalities. Of course, when we talk mental fitness, part of the reason we talk mental fitness is because it parallels so well with physical fitness, and they both go hand in hand. And in sport and in professional sport, we have the sort of bastions of great physical fitness in front of us, but a lot of them also have powerful stories and inspirations to talk around the mental fitness side that goes with it. And I think those individuals can suck people into the room as well. So there's probably, as you say, we're working with the Nicks of the world and of New South Wales to help us understand these regions and areas and people that we're about to speak to try and tailor the best solution is key.
What do you think when you hear that from Tim? Do you think that's the right way to look at it, Nick, especially around that sort of sport? And I like to look at it as your mental fitness and your physical fitness. Give yourself a mark out of 10. It gets your mind thinking that I know what I have to do to get physically fit, but we still probably don't have the right exercises in mind to get ourselves mentally fit.
Yeah, that's right. It's much physical fitness is much more popular, I suppose, than mental fitness, and certainly amongst sort of the age group of 20s, early 30s. The sports clubs would be absolutely a great way to go. And one of the advantages with that is you can actually kind of enforce them to be there. You can get the club on side, and then the players have to be, just tack it on to the start of a training session or something, and they don't get a choice. So, take whatever means necessary.
We've done that plenty of times, Nick, where it's like, okay, boys, into the sheds, and it's like, we're not doing training tonight, and they're like, what's going on here, and all of a sudden the pizzas arrive and the waters and the cokes, and it's just a complete stitch up. But it gets them there, but always, without bar none, at the end of that 90 minutes or 2 hours, depending on how much Q&A there is, they all come up and shake your hand and say, thank you so much. I really got a lot out of that. If you'd ask them as they're driving to training, you know, you're going to sit there and do a bit of mental fitness stuff. First, they'd say, what's mental fitness? And then secondly, they'd go, oh, mate, that's not for me. I don't need it, thanks. So sometimes by just offering up the pizzas and stuff, it gets the boys in.
Yeah, no, different people. I mean, often we run events and we sort of tack a mental health little session onto it, just from our perspective as not as trained mental health advocates. It's more about information sharing and that sort of thing. But there's so many cases where you know that you're just not going to get the right people there if you sell it as a mental health event. So you sell it as a farm field day, and you just add this little thing on the ends, just sow the seed. That's it. While you've got them there, and then you can sort of build on that.
I think that's very clever. That's a great idea. So we've been going for, I'm not too sure, but certainly we're around about the time. But for Gotcha4Life, from my point of view, the fact that Landcare and us have got together is amazing. It just seems to make so much sense. I think the only way that we won't get this right is if we don't make sure that we've got to make sure that we look after people like yourself, Nicole, and listen to whatever you have to say. If we engage you guys correctly in all the different regions and listen to you, you'll know all the little nuances to be able to move it forward. So it's lovely to get to know you a little bit like this. And I can't wait for us all to be out of COVID and all having a big hug together in front of a big room of men and women and children, and building that mental fitness for our state. I think it's very exciting. So thank you so much for your time, Nick, and Adrian. Thank you for your trust in us and our partners. And we've certainly got a lot of trust in you guys too. So thank you very much for your time today. And let's hope that we can go out and do some really wonderful work together.
Thank you. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Nicole. Thank you, Tim.
Look forward. Yeah, thanks, Adrian. Look forward to working with you, Nicole. Brilliant.
Likewise.
Thank you.